Yeah, yours.
Okay. Well, good morning, everybody. Time is short, so I'll get into the Excel straight away. And I'll start with sharing a screen and we'll go straight to Excel. Okay. Everyone now should be looking at an Excel sheet that says data methods. Is that right?
That is correct.
Okay. So this is what we're going to look at today. It follows on from what we looked at last time. Navigating in data blocks, some different ways of doing copying of cells, looking at relative and absolute cell references, using filters, and just a short introduction to tables. I don't know whether we'll get through all of that, but we'll do our best. Okay, so the first thing we're going to look at is how we move around a block of data. Now, it doesn't matter very much when we've got a small block of data. So you're looking at a screen now which has got a keyboard on it and which has got a small block of data below the keyboard. And you can see that I've selected the cell at the top left-hand corner of that block of data, where it says name. When I click on a cell in that block, you can see that when I click on one, the outline of the cell becomes slightly bolder. So you can see which one that I'm clicking on. If you look also up at the top here, when I click on H18, then you can see that the H along the top here gets highlighted and the 18 on the left here gets highlighted. Let's have some things to show those. So when I click on the cell here, oh dear, this is sorry, having trouble with my mouse here. If I click on H18, click on H18. I hope this mouse starts to work properly. The H becomes illuminated and the 18 becomes illuminated. Also, in the top left-hand corner here, you can see that it says H18, which tells you the name, the reference of the cell that you're in. And we can move around this block of text using the arrows which are here on the right of the keyboard, marked in pink. I'm going to use the right-hand arrow, and as we click on the right-hand arrow on the actual keyboard, you can see that the cell that's selected moves across, or my selection moves across. If you click on the down arrow, then I move down. If I click on the left arrow, you can see that it moves left. Can everyone see that the way that selection is moving, the way that I use the arrows?
Yep.
Okay, that's easy enough. Now, what happens if we add the Shift key at the same time? So the Shift key on the keyboard is here, outlined in red. If I hold that down, and at the same time, I'm starting at the, I'll start on Bugaboo, second line down, under organization. So if I just use the key going left or right, that's what happens without the shift key. But if I hold down the shift key, the selection still moves to the right, but it extends the selection as we move. And if I then do the down arrow as well, it extends the selection down. So this is a very, and if I go to the left, it'll move the extent of the selection to the left. So this is holding the shift key down. I can very quickly select large numbers of cells. That's sometimes very convenient. So the arrow by themselves just moves the selection of the cell. If you hold the shift down, then it changes the selection. If I start with Bugaboo again in the middle, and I hold the Control key down instead of the shift key, this has a different effect. So I'm holding the Control key down, and now when I press rightwards, the arrow to the right, I go to the end of the row. If I hold the Control key down and press the left arrow, I go to the beginning of the row. So I can go to the end of the row or the beginning of the row with just one click of Control key, and going to the downward arrow will take me to the bottom of the column. So I can go from corner to corner of the data block, holding the Control key down. I can just move top left corner, bottom left corner, bottom right corner, top right corner. What happens if there's a gap in the data? Well, you can see I've come down now to the third row of the actual data. I'm currently selecting 2205, the date of birth of Jane. If I hold down the Control and go left, it won't take me to the beginning of the row. It'll take me to the end of the data that it's looking at, that it can reach. It won't cross a space, won't cross an empty cell. If I do it again, it'll move to the start of the next block, and then it'll go on. So similarly, if I started on the Bugaboo and used Control and going down, it will take me first of all to HOJ, then it'll take me to Divine, and then it'll take me to MIFA. But this is a really quick way. If you've got 300 columns and 500 rows of data, this is a very quick way of checking that things are okay at the right-hand end or at the left-hand end of the data. Or if you want to go back to the top and see what the headings are, press Control up, and there you are at the top of your data. So that's a very quick way of traveling around your data. But what if you want to do something like select the whole of a row? Well, if you go to the first column, I'm selecting there Maria, and I hold down Shift and Control, that means the Control means I'm going to go a long way, and the Shift means I'm going to extend the selection. So if I click on Maria and hold down Shift and Control and then press the right arrow, that will select the whole row. If I then go down, use the arrow to go down, that will select the next row as well. In fact, no, because I'm holding now Control, it'll select the whole data. So this is a very quick way of, for example, if I want to just select a whole column, go to the top row, midline 1, hold Shift and Control, press the arrow down, and I've got the whole column selected in one click of the mouse. So if you want to do some reformatting, or if you want to do copy a row or copy a column, you've got to select it first. So this, using the arrows in combination with Shift and or the Control key, is a very quick and easy way and reliable way of moving around your data. Can everyone still hear me?
Yes, we can.
Loud and clear.
Okay. Any questions on that? I'll take that as a no, and I'll move on to shortcuts. Shortcuts for copying cells. Now, copying cells is something that is going to be used frequently. It may be for putting cells from one place onto another worksheet, or it may be for creating a worksheet in the first place. Now, the first thing I want to show you is Ctrl Z. Now, when I say Ctrl Z, I mean you hold down the Control key, which is marked in red, and you hold down the Z key as well. This is known as undo, and it's a very, very useful shortcut. It undoes the last thing you did, and we'll use it several times here to see how that works. So if you make a mistake, hit Ctrl Z. If you do something and you're not sure about it, hit Ctrl Z. Make an experiment, you don't like the results of your experiment, hit Ctrl Z, and it will undo what you just did. Even if you do something and then you do something else and then you do something else, then you can, it'll undo all the things that you've just done in sequence. Okay, we'll use that as we go forward. Now, when we want to copy a cell, it may be that we're copying just some simple data. So here we've got a column of data, A, B, C, D, E, F. And we might want to copy this, the cell A, or where the A is. So the long way round is to go up to your ribbon where it says Home. And at the left-hand end on mine, it says there's a section here with clipboard. And we look for the copy symbol, which is these two little bits of paper supposed to remind you that you're copying something. So if we we select a cell A, then we copy it, and this the boundary turns into a dashed boundary that sort of rotates around. Now, where has it copied it to? The computer is remembering this in its memory, ready to copy it to somewhere else. So now if we go to the next door cell and click paste up here in the top left, it puts the thing that it had remembered into the new selection. The A gets copied into A, the next door cell. We can do that again. We'll click on the B and we'll go up here to the top left. We'll click on the copy symbol. We'll go to F18 and we'll click on the paste symbol. Easy. Let's use Ctrl Z to undo both of those. Press Ctrl Z, press Ctrl Z, and I've got back to where I was to start with. But what if we wanted to do all that in one go? We can select the A, B, C, D, E, F and copy that using the copy icon. Then go to the next door block, click on paste, and it copies the whole block. Well, that's quicker. But Excel is quite clever about this. we'll undo that by doing Ctrl Z. And I'll copy the, I'll press Escape so that we haven't got anything selected. I'm going to select the A, B, C, D, F, and I'm going to copy it again. And this time, I'm only going to select F17. Now, in the computer's mind and memory, on what it calls its clipboard, actually, it's actually thinking of all those cells, A, B, C, D, E, F. And if I tell it to copy them into F17, it thinks to itself, there is no room for it there. So it will spread them into the neighboring cells. So if you click on the paste icon, it will still copy down all the ones that you wanted. Just if you choose the first cell to paste into, it will paste all the others as well. Now that's just if you're using the icons in the menu. I'm using Ctrl Z to undo, clear that space. I'm using the Escape key to get rid of the selection. There is a quicker way to do this. It becomes rather slow to keep going up to the icon here and then to the menu. We can use Ctrl C and Ctrl V. Ctrl C means pressing the Control key and also the C key. Ctrl F means hitting the Control key and also the V key. So we've got Ctrl C and Ctrl V. Ctrl C is the copy, the shortcut for copy. And Ctrl V is the shortcut for paste. Now, when I mean shortcuts, it means it will just do it when you press those keys. Let me give you an example. So now if I select the cell with A in it and I hit Ctrl C, haven't been to the menu at all, the computer now has that cell on its clipboard, and if I go to the new selection and hit Ctrl V, it copies it. That's much quicker than going up to the menu. Now there are actually lots of different ways of lots of different slight variations of control and copy and paste, and we won't go into all of those today, but the basic idea of using Ctrl C to copy and Ctrl V to paste, we'll do several examples of here. So if I undo that by doing Ctrl Z, I'm now going to select the A, B, C, D, E, F, use Ctrl C, go to the next column, press Ctrl F, and I've copied that data straight down. Now, if we now go into the block of data which is marked yellow, we'll do a bit more practice of this using the Ctrl C and Ctrl F. The first column just has a number 1 at the top of it. What if I want a 1 all the way down? Well, I'd press Ctrl C, and then I'd select all the rest of the column. One quick way of selecting the rest of the column would be to select the top row, the top cell of that selection, and hit Shift Control. Oh, that's gone right to the top bottom of the data. Okay, too far. Let's just do this. So I've now selected where I want this to go, and I do Control V. It puts the 1. Undo that. Let's look at where we might put that 1. We could do Control C, and we could put it in the right-hand column over here. So Control C, Control V for copy and paste is a very powerful way just of copying data around. Control Z to undo it. If I go to where it shows Maria, The Maria, you'll notice, is in yellow. Now, the reason that Maria is in yellow is because in the Maria cell, the yellow Maria cell, I've not typed Maria, I've got a formula that puts Maria in that cell for me. You can see where the formula is by looking up at the top there. I've got a equals K17 in the formula bar. And in the cell which says Maria, it says Maria because it's going to, it's saying, it's got a formula that says, go to cell K17 and put into L17 the contents of the cell K17. Let's do that again for the viola row. I'll type an equals, and then I'll type K17. Now that's showing I've got a formula in there, which means it turns yellow. Why has that gone to 17? Oh, because that should have been 18. Okay. If I type equals K19 here, it'll copy in the Jane. Now here we're learning just about a very simple formula for copying data from one place to another using a formula. So this will be K20. This will be equals K21. Now notice you do need the equal sign. If I just type K22, I'll just get K22. But if I put an equal sign in front of it, it knows to go and get the cell K22. Let's undo all of those. What if I wanted to start with this K17 formula and I wanted to copy it into all the cells below it? I don't want to type them in every time. I just want to copy the same formula all the way down. Well, one way of doing it would be to go to the cell I want to copy, click on Maria, press Ctrl C, then go to all the cells that I want to put it into and press Ctrl V. And it's copied the formula all the way down. Now notice, now this is the beginning of talking about how Excel manages references. When I talk about a reference, I mean a reference to another cell. So K17 is a reference, it's a cell reference. And if I go down to the next line down, viola, it says equals K18. The next one down is equal K19. The next one down is equal K20, K21, K22. Now, this is a bit strange at first sight because what I did was I copied the formula down from Maria, Ctrl C, which is K17, and then I put it all the way into the rest of the column, did Ctrl V, and it copied it. But it's actually copied different cell references, K17, K18, K19, K20. What is Excel doing here? Well, Excel thinks to itself, when I wrote K17, it looked and saw that the cell that was being collected, that was being referenced, was one cell to the left. So it worked out that you didn't always want Maria copied all the way down. You didn't want K17 copied all the way down. You wanted the column to the left copied. So you wanted Viola copied, or Jane copied, or Esther copied. So Excel realized that you wanted a relative reference. It's not going to look exactly for K17. It's going to look for the cell to the left on the same row. So when it comes down to where the viola is, it looks one cell to the left. When it looks where the Jane is, it looks one cell to the left. When it looks where Esther is, it looks one cell to the left and picks that up. Now, whenever you do copy and paste, or you do a copy of a cell which includes a formula, Excel's default behavior is to use relative references. That is, references which look for the pattern of where the cell is referencing. We'll look at this in a little more detail on the next sheet. We're going to practice a little bit more copying and pasting here. I'm going to press Ctrl Z to undo. Now, there are other ways of doing copying data which are very useful in Excel, particularly in blocks of data. And we've got one here called drag to copy and fill. So if I go to where I've got this 1 here in the top left-hand corner, you'll see that at the bottom right-hand corner of the cell I've selected is a little green square. If I click on that, my mouse, or if I hover over that, my mouse turns to a big plus. And if I then drag in any direction, it will copy that data. This is called filling. And it works vertically or it works horizontally. So if I go to S1, if I go to 2 here and pull this down, that will also copy down the 2. Just by pulling the data down, it copies the data. So if I blank out these ones here on the left, the A, B, C, D, E, F, I could have used the same system for just dragging across here, and we'd have copied the A, B, C, D, E, F just in one small click of the mouse, one dragging it. Now, Excel here is really clever. It not only copies cells, but it also copies patterns if you show it a pattern. Let me show you what I mean. If I select 1 and 2, you remember that if I select 2 and pull it down, it copies the 2. Undo that. What happens if I select the 1 and 2? Well, Excel notices that those cells already form a pattern, 1, 2. So what is the next in that pattern? Well, Excel is going to guess that it's a 3. So if you pull that down, it copies a sequence of numbers, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Well, that can be very useful. What if you want to, instead of putting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 in a column, I could do 1, go down, type 2, go down, type 3, go down, type 4, go down. But I don't need to do that. All I need to do is type 1 and 2, and then pull down the rest of the column. It doesn't save me much time if it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. But if you want 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 down to 1,120, you can do that very quickly using this pull down pattern. What would happen if I clicked on 10 and pulled down? Well, I'd copy down the 10s. What would happen if I copied the 5 and 10, or selected the 5 and 10 and pulled that down? well, Excel will spot the pattern 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, and we'll copy that pattern down. It'll do it horizontally. If I select S1, what will happen? What pattern will Excel spot if I try and pull that to the right? Well, as soon as that, even though it's only one cell, Excel notices that there's a bit of text and then there's a 1. So it thinks, it probably wants S1, S2, S3. So if I pull that to the right, it will spot that pattern. What will happen with S3? I'm not quite sure. Let's try. Okay, it says S4, S5, F6. These are very quick ways of putting data into your creating a block of text. So what happens if I select a cell which has a formula in it and I pull that down? Well, that copies the formula with the relative references. So this is K17, K18, K19, K20, K21, K22. So this gives us a lot of quick ways of copying information into a block of text or into any kind of text. And in particular, I want you to realize that if you copy and paste a formula, copy Maria, you're not copying Maria, you're copying the formula that created Maria, and you paste that in. You're copying and pasting the formula, and you're using, by default, Excel will use relative references. Let's explore the idea of copying and pasting and using formulas a little bit further on the next sheet. But before I go further, are there any particular questions on what we've done so far? And can you still hear me?
I can still hear you.
That's fine. Good. I'm just going to check what's in the chat. Okay. Let's go to the relative. Okay. Let me explain what we have here. We have a column 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 down the left-hand side. Now, I've already prepared that. Of course, if I wanted to write that down, if I wanted to create that quickly, I could do 1, 2, and then copy it down. In the next column, we've just got a 10 and a 10 and a 10. If I wanted to create that quickly, I could put a 10 in the top and copy it down. Now, the third column, I want to multiply the first column by the second column. 1 times 10, 2 times 10, 3 times 10. So I go to E3, and what I type in there, if I look in the formula bar, I've got equals C3 times D3. Now, if I click in the formula bar, where the red rectangle is at the top there, I click at the end of the formula, you can see that the C3 is in blue and the D3 is in red. And that cleverly shows you in my data the cells that are being referenced. C3 is outlined in blue and C3 is in blue. D3 is in red and D3 itself, the cell, is outlined in red and has a slightly red tinge. And that's because it's showing you the cells that are referenced in this formula. So C3 times D3, and that means the answer should be 10. So if I click on enter to enter that formula, we should find that we've done the multiplication of 10. Now in this fourth column, equals C3 times D3, the star means times, I've set this up so that it actually just tells me what the formula is in the third column. This isn't doing anything, it's just telling me what the formula is. So it's just here for convenience. And you'll see that below here, it says, it gives me a hashtag and then NA. This is telling me that there's a problem because it's the fourth column is trying to tell me what the formula is in the third column, but there is no formula. So it's saying, I can't do what you're telling me to do, and it tells me there is an issue. It gives me an error report of NA. It means something isn't working, not applicable, and anything beginning with a hash like that tells you that you've got a bit of a problem with your formula. That's not a problem, information. Now, what if I want to copy down this formula or have the same effect for 2 times 10? Well, I could write equals C4 times D4. And now I've got C4 times D4, and I've got 10. 2 times 10, we're doing times table. What if I and paste and paste and paste and paste. Each paste I'm using a Ctrl V. The idea of using Ctrl V, the V looks like a downward arrow, which means like you're putting the data or the formula into the cell. Ctrl V, Ctrl V. And if you look at these formulas, we've got C3 times D3, C4 times D4, C5 times D5, C6. Well, they're all using the relative reference, going 2 cells to the left, multiplying, and then by 1 cell to the left. C6 times D6. Is there a quicker way? Let's look for some quicker ways. I'm using Ctrl Z to undo all we've just done. If I would do the equal sign, now the fact I've typed the equal sign means that Excel is waiting for a formula, which means if I now move to another cell and click on it, I'm going to click on where the 2 is. It won't move the selection because it knows it's trying to build a formula. It'll type in the name of that cell for you, C4. Then I want a times, and now I want the D4. So I'll click on the D4 and hit the enter. I'll do that again. I hit the equal sign, or before I do, if I go now and click on the 3, it'll move the selection. But if I hit the equal sign first and click on the 3, it'll type in C5 times D5. But we've got quicker ways of copying these cells down. We can click on the formula we want, and we can do Ctrl C to copy it, and we can copy it all the way down with a Ctrl V in one go. Let's undo that. Or we can click on the the formula we want, and we can drag it down all the way down. Each of those ways are quick ways of copying the formula that was in the cell E3. And it is copying the same formula, but it doesn't look quite like the same formula. This looks like C3, D3, D4, C4, D4, C5, D5, C6, D6. But they all mean the same thing in relative terms. They all mean go 2 cells to the left to get the first number, and one cell to the left to get the second number and multiply them together. These are known as relative references because they tell you how far to go. The reason that it uses this notation is a long history, a long business history in Excel and how it competed with another spreadsheet. Most people find it a bit confusing when they start using it. Most people get used to it when they, if you're trying to teach someone to ride a bicycle by saying, first of all, you get your leg across the bicycle, and then you take your feet off the floor and you start pedaling, and then you steer left or right. All of that's true, but you'll keep falling off the bicycle because you actually have to get on the bicycle and try it and learn to balance and learn to pedal, and you'll fall off a few times before you learn to ride the bicycle. That is why the Ctrl Z is so useful, the undo button, because when you try and make a formula like this, the way to do it is you try and make the formula and then you see if it is doing what you want it to do. And if it doesn't do what you want it to do, you try again. And then you try again. And each time it fails, you do the Ctrl Z, but you get back on the bicycle and you try again, and eventually you'll learn to use this in the same way that many people learn to ride a bicycle, a bit by trial and error. And because you have Ctrl Z, you can always undo any of your mistakes. Also, of course, you should keep copies of the files that you're working on so that you, if you completely mess one up, destroy it, you've got a version to go back to. But there are other ways we want to use references. Let's go to absolute reference. What does that mean? Well, here is the same, a very similar setup. I want to multiply the 1 by the 10 to get the 10. I want to multiply the 2 by the 10 to get 20. So I can just copy this down and everything's good to go. It's what we've just done. Ctrl Z to undo that. But you notice that every column, every row uses the same number, 10, all the way down. That's using up a lot of space. And we may not want to use a whole column to write the same number. So why don't we put that number up here in E2? And we'll get rid of this column, this column of 10s. We'll get rid of it altogether. Let's delete that. Let's delete that column. Oh, now you'll see my formula was trying to reference that column, and now that column is gone. So it's giving me another error message. It's saying #ref. The formula, the reference, sorry, the cell that you were referencing is no longer there. So there's an error. You need to sort out what's going on here. Now, I could always, of course, press Ctrl Z, and that would undo, and I'd get rid of my error. But actually, I want to get rid of that column, so I'm going to allow the error for the moment, and I'll sort it out.
We're not seeing your screen updating anymore.
You're not seeing it updating?
No.
My machine screen is paused. How does that happen? Okay. Is that working now? Let's see.
Yes.
Is that working now? Okay. Sorry, I'm having to, there's various bits of graphics on this screen. I'm having to move around, and I accidentally pressed pause share. What I've just been saying will not be at all clear. I'll go back a few things and you can see, I'll say that again. We started here with the same situation we had on the previous worksheet, that when we want to multiply the 1 times the 10, we can copy that formula down, and it does 2 times 10, 3 times 10 with the references, relative references. But what if we want to, instead of using all this space to write 10 in this column, we're going to put a 10 in this space up here, in this cell, E2. And we're going to delete column D. That will give me a reference error because the formula is still looking for what was in the column that I've deleted. Well, what I really want, instead of that reference, I want D2. We're back in business. I'll just make those blank. So I've got a formula here, which is C3 times D2, which gives me, it's this 1 times this 10, and it's giving me 10. Brilliant. That's exactly what I wanted to happen. What happens now if I copy this formula down? 2 times 10, 20. That looks good. So I'll copy on down again and see if it's still working, because I'm testing out this formula. This should give me 30, but it gives me 60. And my alarm bells are beginning to ring. My formula is not working. I'm now pulling it down a bit further, copying it again. It's giving me 240. What I'm really wanting is 4 times 10 and giving me 40, but I'm getting 240. What is going wrong with my formula? Well, let's pull it further down and we'll see we've got a serious problem with our formula. We're trying to multiply 1 times 10 or 2 times 10 or 3 times 10, and we're getting numbers that are far too big. What is happening? Well, the formula is being copied down as a relative reference. So for example, here it's saying C3 times D2, which means 1 times 10. Here it is saying C4 times D3, which is 2 times 10. Here it is C5 times D4, which is 3 times 20. Here it is C5 times D4, which is, so it's doing the, it's always multiplying the column to the left by the cell above. The column to the left by the cell above. Well, it's doing the right, it's obeying what the formula is telling it to do, but we want a way of saying that instead of saying the cell above, we want it always to multiply by 10. So in our formula, instead of saying D2, which means in effect the cell above, we want to tell it always when we copy it to go to D2 itself, actual D2, not the cell above, but actually to the real cell D2, unmoving. And the way that Excel does this, you would never guess it, is by putting a $sign in front of the D and a $sign in front of the 2. Again, it's like riding a bike. This looks very strange if you've not seen it, but once you see it often, you'll get used to it. So our formula here says C3 times D2. And if we copy that down, our formula now says C4 times D2 with the $signs. If we copy it down again, it says C5 times D2. And each time we pull it down, the C5 reference will get copied down as a relative reference. It'll always look to the left. But the D2 reference will always go back to the top of the column. Now the D2 with the dollar signs is called an absolute reference. An absolute reference means that you give the name of the cell absolutely, and it will not change even when you copy it. Excel will not change it even when you copy it. So if we'd taken, if we undo all of those, get rid of them all. And we copy this formula down, C3 times D2. Now it does the right thing. And if we look at the formula that is in each of those cells, each of them has the dollar signs in for the D2. Well, that looks a bit strange, but you've got to have some way of telling Excel that you want to keep that cell unchanging throughout your formula when you copy it. It mostly applies to when you're copying it. And because you want to copy formulas quite often, this is very important. Now, you don't want to be typing these dollar signs the whole time. You might well have to have them, but you don't want to copy them, sort of keep typing them. It's a very slow process. And because it's a slow process, Excel has a shortcut. So let's go back to our formula. The first time when we wrote it in, we'll get rid of that for the moment. And if we select the excuse me, make that a bit bigger so it doesn't obscure what you're seeing. If we select the reference that we want to make absolute, if we press the F4 key, that's on the top row, F stands for function, just press the F4 key and you'll see something strange happen to this reference. It starts off with no dollar signs, then it puts in $2 signs, then it puts in $1 sign, then it puts in $1 sign somewhere else, and then it goes backward to no dollar signs. None, 2, 1, 1, none. 2, 1, 1, none. 2, 1, 1, none. That's each time I press the F4 sign, it changes the type of reference that's there. That's a very quick way of turning a relative reference into an absolute reference, or the reverse. You may think that you don't want to get involved with absolute references, but you probably will at some point, because there are some things that you need to do which need absolute references, and sometimes you need relative references as well. So we'll put that in as back as an absolute reference, and then we'll click on enter, and then we'll copy it down, and our formula works very well. Just going to click on the chat to see what's coming in there. Okay, everybody is showing frozen and unfrozen now. Is everyone seeing the screen as they should now?
Yes.
Okay. Let's go to the next page, which is about mixed references. Now here, we want to put all our multiplication tables on one sheet. So the first thing I'm going to do is I want to put 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 across the top. So if I type in a 2, select them and drag across, that will give me 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. If I put a 2 in here, select and drag down, that gives me all my numbers that I want to multiply. Now, this is a little bit complicated, and we haven't got a lot of time to do an explanation, so I'm going to show it and demonstrate it, and you'll have time to think about it later, and also to experiment yourself and see how it works. I want to multiply, in each cell, I want to multiply the number in the left-hand column, the B column, by the row, by the number in the 2 row. And we're going to, so let's see what we do. If we do equals 1, that's B3, times C2. Well, that's fine for that. It may even work. Let's see. It works. Oh, it worked for some cells, but not others. And you can see the problem is it's this referencing. It's the and the way I'm going to solve it is by making a mixed reference for B3. I'm going to put the $sign in front of the B. So the first number is always going to be the number in column B. And the 3 is a relative reference, meaning that's going to be the row that I'm on. But for the C2, I'm going to want to do it the other way around. I'm going to use F4, and I'm going to press, I don't want $2 signs, I want $1 sign in front of the 2. Press equals. Okay, the 1 times the 1, that's okay. But now what happens if I pull it all the way across? 1 times 1 is 1. 1 times 2 is 2. 1 times 3 is 3. What happens when I pull this down? It completes the whole multiplication table, because whichever cell I'm in, it goes to the beginning of the row and multiplies it by the top of the column. And that's by using the mixed reference with $1 sign in each reference. Now, if you understood that first time and you've not seen it before, then you are a genius. And next Friday, you can do the sessions. Because it is complicated, but it's also very useful. So because we are short of time, I'm not going to do any more explanation of that. I'm just going to leave you, it's being recorded. You can look at this again and see it next time. I'll see it later. I want to move on to the filter. Well, I suppose I should ask, are there any urgent questions on the mixed page, mixed references page? Okay. Here we've got some data. It's just a block of data. We've got names, we've got numbers, all kinds of things. The question is, we want to interrogate this data. We want to look at it. We might want to sort it. We might want to look at particular rows. We might want to look at the record to do with Jane. Or so if we click somewhere in the data and click on here in the top right hand corner, we've got sort and filter. We click on filter. We get these little arrows in. Now, we've come to the end of our time. Always we get caught out by the time. I think I'm going to have to come back to this another time. We'll look at using the filter a bit more next time. We'll try and fit that in at the beginning. Any questions, any burning questions on what we've done today?
Thank you, Brendan. Mine is not a question. I just thought that I would need to do a little more practice for the things that you've explained for us to master them. And especially the last table, the multiplication table.
Yeah,
I guess probably we would do a recap maybe in the next session, or we can find the recording easily. I don't know how we can find the recording easily.
Faith and Mim are in charge of the recording, and I think they put that on YouTube, and you can look at it again. But I would encourage you to start a new spreadsheet, and just to practice. Try and make that recording. Try and make that multiplication table. Just with doing a bit of trial and error. You don't expect to ride a bicycle without falling off. You will make lots of mistakes with regards to referencing to begin with, but then you will become very expert. And when you are used to it, it is quite easy to do, and Excel helps you. Excel does the right thing most of the time, but you are always putting the formula in and testing it, putting the formula in and testing it. And if it's not right, Ctrl Z. But it is important to be able to do the relative and absolute and mixed references if your formulas are to work. Okay. Thank you for your time, and we will speak again next week.
Thank you, Brandon. Do we go back to Friday next week?
As far as I'm concerned, it's Friday next week. Yes.
Does that work, Mem? Miriam. Because I think Viva is holding a networking meeting, and there will be either training or finishing that Friday afternoon. So we might have to get back to you on the time on that one.
Okay. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Okay. If you have any feedback, send me an email via Mim or via Faith, and I can try and change the way that I do things. Okay. Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.